You're listening to Rookie Pirate Radio, the official anime and manga podcast for In Between Drafts. I'm John Negroni.
And I'm Travis Hymas.
And today, well, One Piece is on break this week, so we have a very special guest to join us in our roundtable discussion of the new anime/reboot, Trigun Stampede. Joining us now, she is the one and only editor-in-chief of In Between Drafts. Welcome to the show, Allyson Johnson.
Thank you for having me on a non-One Piece week.
I mean, you are our boss. And so that means that we can't just like order you to watch One Piece, but you can order us to talk about Trigun Stampede, even though you didn't.
I feel like that's not totally accurate based on our conversations and the amount of bullying I am being leveled with to watch One Piece, but we can say it.
To be fair, yeah, you are being peer pressured, bullied and whatnot, but not just by us. It's like by everybody.
I know. Oh, I'm so aware. No, I have no break.
I was going to say, it's not from me. It's just my fault.
That's a whole lot. We are going to have a One Piece discussion with Allie at one point, because Allie is going to watch the anime, we assume, at some date. So keep that in mind, all of you listening. Before we jump right into Trigun Stampede, just a reminder that we would love to have you, the person listening right now, to join our Discord so you can hang out with us, chat about anime and manga and all the other types of entertainment that we cover on In Between Drafts, such as movies, books, music, games, and all that good stuff. There is a link to join up in the show notes of this episode. You'll find the Discord link and everything, and our social media, of course, too, if you'd like to hit us up there. We'd love your feedback, anything you'd like to drop a line about. Especially as we have One Piece coming back next week, and that'll be coming up shortly, and looking forward to more One Piece as usual. But this week we're talking about Trigun Stampede, and so this will be like a roundtable discussion. And just to caveat things, I don't think we knew this, Travis, before we jumped in here or started talking and everything. None of us have watched the original Trigun. None of us have read the manga, so we are not going to be experts on the differences, because Trigun Stampede is coming to us from Studio Orange, and it is like a revamp, it's a revash of the Trigun manga and anime. I know the anime came out in the late 90s. I'm very aware of it, but I was never super into it. And I don't think you were either, Travis.
So just as a programming note, we are reviewing this episode by episode on the site in text form.
That's right.
So you can check those out after this roundtable. But as I copped to it immediately in the beginning paragraphs of that first episode review is because Trigun was one of those Adult Swim Toonami, early Toonami era localizations.
It was like Toonami Adult Swim, though, right?
Yes. Yeah, it was because it's actually a seinen manga, so a little bit more adult than your regular shonen fare. But yeah, it was. I didn't have access to cable anime at the time it was running, so I don't have outside of cultural osmosis. I can pick out Vash in a crowd, for example.
Instead of Where's Waldo, it's Where's Vash. It's a little easier to play that game.
Oh yes, but yeah, that's my only background from that is just cultural osmosis. So this has been very interesting.
I think for me, it was just Trigun was just a little bit before my time. It was my time. I was able to get in Cowboy Bebop, for example, because that was coming out on Adult Swim, and I was able to see that. I feel like by the time Trigun was a thing, I was already sort of phasing out of that kind of anime, and so I just kind of missed my shot there. What about you, Allie? Do you know anything about Trigun kind of going into this? Had you ever looked into it before?
Yeah, no, I didn't know anything about it, in all honesty, which kind of makes me feel like I often do, that I need to learn and know more.
Well, you get to experience it with fresh eyes.
That too, and I'm excited that I do, because I know that a lot of people came into the show with a lot of preconceived notions and expectations, and essentially kind of this sense that it was going to be wrong just based on the fact that it's not the original. So I do like that fact. But yeah, I also came to anime in general pretty late. I watched Cowboy Bebop in college. And in the last couple of years, I've made, kind of a mad dash, forgive me, in trying to catch up to everything. So yeah, I don't know if I would have been able to pick this character out of a crowd.
Interesting. Well, okay. we got to get it right out of the way that this is an anime from Studio Orange. And to what Ali just mentioned, there has been a lot of, what's the opposite of hype? There's been a lot of like pre-backlash. Before the thing even came out, people have been sort of coming out and saying, oh, this is going to be like Beastars, but that's not the right, according to some people, animation style for Trigun. I think a lot of people went into this because it is CGI animated. It does have a totally different visual style. Vash looks a lot different in this anime interpretation. And I want to know what you all think of it. But I mean, Travis, why do you think people are complaining about this? Because that's the thing. If they had just done like an updated Trigun, just reskinning it, I feel like they would have complained about that too. I would have complained. I would have been like, well, we already have the original, we don't need a remaster. Like, I always prefer reinterpreting things, changing things up and going for different styles to justify the reboot itself. What do you think?
The first thing to note is Stampede is not just like a Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood situation, narratively speaking. We're
right.
It's a full kind of like adaptation. It would be closer to something like the JoJo's OVAs of the 90s, where they just literally couldn't fit everything in because that would be untenable.
My understanding is that there are things revealed in the first episode that you don't even find out in the original Trigun until toward the end. And it's very different.
That's what I've heard. I'm lucky enough to be married to somebody who did watch the original, so they can check my work a little bit. I can ask them non-spoilery questions. But the other thing about the CGI anime take is it's kind of a meme in the online anime space, and for me personally, I think it's because they tried to make a Berserk anime with it and did not do a good job, and that has completely just soured a certain segment of the community on touching anything with this. Even though Studio Orange, as you mentioned, Beastars looks great. It's visually stunning. It has real artistic cohesion between its designs. It's not just putting a bunch of 3D avatars into a space and rotoscoping them. There's actual art direction in play here. I think it's just, that Berserk anime is not very good. Just to put it out there. It was still experimental at the time, without getting too mean about it. And it just put a big chip on everybody's shoulders about the entire technology.
Yeah, I definitely, to me, I haven't watched a lot of CGI anime, really just Beastar, so I had a sense of this sort of thing. But I came around on CGI animation probably around the time of the first season of Dragon Prince, because to me, if the story, the characters can really come together, then even though it's not my preferred style, I always prefer the hand-drawn variants when they're done well, at least. But, you can still have a great show that utilizes that animation for its own benefit, I think. I don't know, Ali, if you have any sort of like favoring of CGI animation, or if you've checked out Beastars, but was the animation in Trigun Stampede any sort of a hindrance for you? And I guess we could just talk about, do we like this show? What do you think, Ali?
So, I do like this show, and I do think it's aided in part by the fact that it's like deliberately in the CGI style. I also am a huge fan of Beastars. I'm a huge fan of the studio's other show, Land of Lustrous. I think all three have used CGI in really interesting ways to kind of really amp up the fluidity and the motion of the characters. I don't think it would work for every show. I certainly don't prefer it in every type of series, but I think in this case, they have a really good understanding of when and why it works. I think it works with certain characters better. I think Vash certainly is amplified by the CGI and his movements, and you get the clumsy limbs of him running kind of always a step ahead of himself better because of it. But yeah, I don't know. I think animation is so cool because it allows for so many different variations and so many different art forms, and to hinder it to like one specific style seems like pushing the art form backwards.
I couldn't agree more with that. Yeah, I think people who might be CGI haters, CGI animation haters, might actually have their minds changed at least a little bit when they actually watch Trigun Stampede and Land of the Lustrous as well, and a few of the other Studio Orange shows where they are way more expressive than you would probably expect from that format. Like even a show like The Dragon Prince, like it is kind of night and day. But Travis, what about you? I haven't been reading your reviews of Trigun Stampede. Not yet. I haven't bookmarked, favorited, all that good stuff. But I don't know what you think of this show quite yet.
So, animation aside, like I said, it's kind of I don't know that I would necessarily have come to it with the, oh yeah, this is the perfect format for it. But it's inarguable that they're doing a great job visually. There's shots in just even the first episode that would have taken probably twice as many man hours and wouldn't have looked as good in an integrated or like half and half sequence. As for the show itself, it's great. I've been blown away just by its immediate atmosphere setting. And I love that it just is kind of all gas, no brakes when it comes to, okay, we know what the pieces of the story. Most people who are coming to this know the pieces of the story. We're going to show you up front what we're changing so that you can get on board with what our vision is. It's a bold move, and I'm all for it.
Okay, I'm going to be the weird one here. I'm going to say that I like this one. I like it a little bit. I do not love this show, though. And I'm really struggling with it. And I think, as we talk about it, there are 5 episodes out, and I'm going to keep watching because I do want to give this show the fair shake. I do want to finish season 1 and hopefully start. Sometimes I do think, at least for me personally, and plenty of other people, sure, sometimes it does take a little bit for some anime to really get me and for me to be like as invested as I want to be. For this show, I think I'm struggling a little bit. I think I'm just struggling with the way the story moves. And I'm struggling a bit with the scene-to-scene interactions. I do like the animation. I think the action itself tends to be, all gas, no brakes. I mean, we are really just moving. Like, you can't complain about the pacing in this show. I'm struggling to really connect with these characters. I like Vash a lot. I like his character, the construction of the character. I like getting to know him. I don't love him yet. I don't feel like I'm really getting a lot of substance quite yet to really get fully invested. And I'm struggling a little bit with the side characters. I think like Roberto De Niro, funny name, but there's just something about his character where I feel like I've already seen this character before, and I'm not quite as into sort of the twists and turns of where he might be coming from as this sort of veteran reporter. Kind of similar with Meryl Streep. Like I don't dislike the character, but I don't know. There's something about her where I just don't feel like I have a full grasp of her motivations yet beyond what's on the surface level. I will say the character who I don't want to give away, there's a character who is going to come into the scene later into the episodes that are available. He comes along, and I think that's where I'm starting to see the potential for my interest to really start to pick up, particularly with Vash's twin brother, who gets introduced as well in the show pretty early. And I'm starting to see it, but I don't know. What are you guys liking about this show so far by comparison? Because I know, Allie, you were saying that like you're enjoying it in terms of the animation, even though you think that it's like maybe not your preferred animation, it's still coming through for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, first and foremost, I do love the Vash character. I think I was sold pretty quickly on his characterization, and that was kind of what got me into watching episode 3. I tend to have a rule where I try 2 episodes out of a new anime. I think that's a good, way to kind of get the sense of what it's going for, and if it's for me, and if in 10 episodes everybody's like, you have to keep watching, you made a mistake, I'll try it again. But usually I'm like 2 and I dip if I don't like it. But in this case, I really loved Vash. I didn't so much love the supporting characters like you said. I wouldn't say that I do now even. But episode 3 felt like it was an explosion of all the potential it had hinted at. It completely it completely levels the story in a way that I don't think people who weren't aware of the original, like myself, were anticipating. But yeah, I also think the action is just a lot of fun. I think there's this very distinct style to the world and the characters. Also, and this is such a me thing, it kind of reminds me of Doctor Who. Particularly,
that is not what I was expecting.
I know, and I totally understand why you wouldn't, but there's just the kind of alien-like creature who is stopping in different towns and going on these different episodic adventures, which I don't always love serialized TV shows, but this just scratches an itch that I didn't realize I had. Also, the OP is so good, and I know that's not something to actually judge a show by. I've been burned before, but it makes me have a lot of hope of where the story is going to go.
I fully agree with that. It's one of the few OPs where I can't skip. It's a banger. It's add to the playlist worthy. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a song, it's good, but I was saving this for a little bit later on. But the OP strikes me as an attempt by an anime studio to go prestige television. That's the vibe that I get from it.
Really? Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah. It's a good song and everything. It's just it's different. It's a kind of a different vibe. I don't hate it, but that's kind of the energy that I get. And that's actually kind of the energy I get from the show as well. In that it's very much leaning into that space western concept. I wouldn't have picked Doctor Who. I think that's actually a pretty apt description, especially with the companions that haven't quite gotten fleshed out yet. But for me, it's big Mandalorian energy. You have this guy who genuinely just doesn't want to have relationships with people, and also can't help but have people gravitate towards him due to his energy. And obviously his energy is very different than the Mando, but it's that same kind of space western aspect of a guy with a gun going around and trying to do a little bit of good, and he's got way more baggage than he's letting on. And I think it's got that tone just right. And it's funny you bring up Roberto, because I think he's a new addition to the show. I had to check. And Roberto I like because he is kind of the wet blanket on all of this, where it almost feels like he's there to kind of get proven wrong, because he's the cynic. He's seen all of this. He's been in no man's land forever. And he's kind of stuck on this little adventure with them now, kind of forced to be kind of the adult in the room. And that is always the form of cynicism in anime, let's be honest. So I quite like him, actually.
I'll say that one thing I do respect about this anime, they do seem to understand, and maybe this is a carryover from the original as far as I would know. I like that they understand that, to your point, Travis, this is a Western and a sci-fi. Like, it's sci-fi and Western. It has a really good balance of the two styles and how they can complement each other really well. Because with sci-fi, you want the sort of interesting technology, and they have it with the idea of plants and the idea of like a biological, sort of miracle of a piece of tech and how dependent that makes people on it. That kind of getting mixed in with this idea of, to what you said, like that classic Western of the man with no name, the idea of someone who comes around Mandalorian style. And yeah, people can't help but, gravitate toward this person who is an outlaw, who is on the edges of what's within the law, but then also criticizing, the law and criticizing those sorts of tropes in a very sci-fi way. So it's a really good mix of things. I think what's missing for me is that maybe it's like the sense of humor isn't clicking with me as well, because I wasn't thinking of Doctor Who, but I was thinking of like Borderlands for sure. But I love like when we're in environments like that where it is sort of like wacky and anything can happen. I really want there to be a little bit more, like if you're going to do the Mad Max thing, I want there to be like a nice mix of like the humor and the sensationalism. And I guess so far it's had a little of that, which is why I like it. But I guess there's just something missing for me. I think I'm just sort of missing the heart of it. What do you think, Allie?
Yeah, because I agree with you. I do think the humor is lacking in the sense that, per joke, they're not all landing. A lot of it, for me, the humor is in the design of the Vash character. Again, it's so silly, but in the second episode where he's just running all over the place and it's literally like he's trying to catch up with his legs, I think that does a lot to endear me to that character, because it's like he is just barely containing a semblance of control on the issue. So I think that's where I find some of the charm and some of the humor, but again, it's so character based. Or like when he's desperate for help in the first episode and he's crying, and it's like it's not a hero moment. But but I do agree. I don't think the humor is like knocking it out of the park, and I think when it tries for it, it comes across kind of cringy because it so clearly wants that laugh. But I think it's going to take a couple more episodes for me to kind of really see how it falls in terms of, all the anime I've watched before. But I think right now, if they continue the level of the characterization that they've been doing and slowly integrate more of like Meryl and Roberto's actual personalities, rather than them just being like follies to work off of, or like just the reactionary characters, Yeah, I think the show could really impress us. But right now, I definitely find the heart and soul in the lead character and in the visuals.
So before we wrap up, I figure like maybe we could all kind of say like one last thing on it, but I was actually wondering if we can throw a little bit of a curveball. Since we are talking anime, we're not talking about a manga this week or a One Piece video game. I was kind of curious if either of you would want to maybe give one other anime recommendation, something you've been watching lately that you think other people should know about, even if it's very popular and people probably heard of it, something that you think has the juice and is worth checking out. But before we do that, Travis, did you have anything else you wanted to say about Trigun Stampede? Do you have a lot of hope for the rest of this season? What you think they can accomplish?
I feel good about it. I totally agree that right now Vash himself is the strongest part of the show, which doesn't always happen in anime, so I'm okay with it. I do also feel like there's a lot of we've got all the players on the board now. Over the past 5 episodes, they've been bringing in some other characters, a little bit of lore dips here and there, and I think we're just on the cusp of really getting something, to really motivate the story forward. And once we hit that point, and that could be as soon as the next episode, like, let's be honest here, but as soon as that final nugget comes into place, I think we're really going to have something special here. That said, I do want to specifically call out the 3rd episode. Because I thought it was a showstopper visually. Obviously, we don't have all the pieces to really understand the context of everything that's going on. But in a different anime, that would have been a season finale. And if the show can put out episodes like that, even if it's not on every single week, I think we've got a very strong contender here at the start of the year, at the start of the winter season. And I always feel good about that. Anime is a big business. There's a lot of good burn down the house anime, but that doesn't necessarily mean they all come out right now. So this is a good sign for the year, I think.
All right. Well, Trigun Stampede, you can watch it now on Crunchyroll, depending on where you're at. And we'll keep following along on this. And if we have good reason, we could always jump back in and try again after the season's over. Who knows? It depends on you, the listener. So again, join up in our Discord and send us your feedback. If you're ever curious about an anime or something we can talk about down the road or talk about again, we're open to hear it. But yeah, since I'm the one who threw the curveball in about doing an anime recommendation, I guess I should go first so the two of you don't have to scramble. But because I did not prepare you for this, but I think it would be cool to do like one little extra thing to recommend for people, especially if they're already watching Trigun and they're not sure what else to watch. So for me, I got to give this one a shout out because at first glance, I kind of rolled my eyes at the new anime Buddy Daddies. Because I think we all probably assumed that, they're just sort of trying to capitalize on the huge success of Spy Family, both the manga and the breakout success of the anime last year. But I still watched Buddy Daddies anyway. I still checked it out on Crunchyroll, and I'm really glad I did because, look, it's not Spy Family. It doesn't have that same sort of like once in a long while, like an anime just kind of, it has something for almost everybody, right? Buddy Daddies is a kind of a specific thing. It does follow a similar format, but it is its own show, and I'm glad I gave it a chance. And it is the basic setup, and this is from Aniplex and Nitro Plus. The basic setup is there are these two young guys in their, they're supposed to be like their late 20s, early 30s, single bachelors that live together. This is a contemporary Tokyo. So it's not like Spy Family where we're sort of in this like quasi Cold War sort of setup. This is just sort of the modern day. And these two guys happen to be hitmen. And after a series of weird hijinks and random stuff that happens, they both come under the care of a young girl who's the daughter of one of their targets, and they find themselves having to essentially raise this child in essentially a comedy, with some action in it. Not a ton of action, or not as much action as I think I was expecting, but it is a heartwarming show. I do think the young girl in this, Miri, is extremely different from Anya, so you're not going to get that same sort of like, oh, I just wish I was watching Spy Family. At least I didn't, because I was really enjoying their different take on like, this kid is obviously more normal. Like, this is not a telepath kid, for example. And the two guys, they're not like that sort of hyper competent, Death Note level spy characters. They're kind of hapless in some ways. And I found the show so far, and it only has a few episodes out, so you can catch up on it pretty quick. I think there are actually 5 episodes of this available now. The main guys are pretty relatable. They're very, they're much easier, much closer to people I think we would know in real life. And I think that makes it all the more fun. So if you are missing Spy Family and you kind of wish there was something else to sort of ease you off, especially since I caught up on the manga pretty recently. So I am definitely not getting that steady stream of Spy Family I was. But Buddy Daddies is a certainly worthy, use of your time. I don't know, Allie or Travis, either of you have been watching or have a totally different opinion from me on Buddy Daddies. But yeah, is it on your radar?
Oh yeah, I'm watching it every weekend.
Okay, perfect.
I double feature that and Trigun, and then My Hero. And Blue Lock. It's a great Saturday night, in all honesty.
Saturdays are peak right now, yeah.
But no, I'm actually really enjoying it, and I like how you say that Miri is very, I think you said more normal, and by that I think what you mean is more annoying, and I think that's really refreshing, actually.
She's like an actual human child. Like, that's
and they can often be annoying, and I think that's relatable in the fact they still want her around and they still want to form this little family. I think it's a really wholesome show with more blood somehow than
definitely more than Spy
Family.
Yeah, there's more death, but yeah, it's still wholesome in a weird way.
Yeah.
Is Travis gonna disagree with us? Is Travis gonna be the Buddy Daddy naysayer?
No. So because Allie was gonna cover that on the site separately as well, in more detail. I kind of avoided it because I don't want us to just cover the same like 3 anime all year long.
Fair enough.
looking at our year-end list and seeing Spy Family all over it. So I'm gonna. I haven't watched it yet. I wholeheartedly trust your recommendation. I'm gonna steer in an opposite direction though, from fun times to a lot of emotional pain and fantasy, because this is an anime that I think is great. But it also it's now in its 2nd season, so it gets to enjoy the curse of being an anime that's older than 6 weeks, and that's a 2 Year Eternity. I don't know if either of you have watched that. The 2nd season dropped pretty late.
I gave up on it.
Really?
I watched half the 1st season, and I just couldn't get into it. And I think I talked about this with Allie once, and she was also disappointed with me, if I recall. And
no.
Deservedly so?
So, no, because I only watched 1 episode and I didn't not continue. Because
I'm thinking of someone else then.
Yeah.
I think we actually probably were relating on it. Never mind.
Yeah, it was more that the 1st episode hurt me so deeply
yeah.
that I just thought, you know what, Allie, give yourself some time and you'll revisit it. And which studio is this so that I don't say it wrong, but I think I know what it is.
Oh, geez, why am I blank? It was Brain's base. It was Brain's base in the first season, and it changed, I think, actually.
See, for some reason, I thought it was Kyoto Animation, which is why I would usually go and gravitate towards that type of storytelling. Or no, it's by the writer who did A Silent Voice.
Yes.
Which was done by Kyoto Animation. Yes. So essentially, there were plenty of reasons of why I would be drawn to it. But yeah, the 1st episode just leveled.
And I'm going to be straight with you. That doesn't stop.
Stop.
but it's such a beautiful look at what about like the layers of grief, and also just like it's you've seen A Silent Voice, so you kind of know like the thought process of this particular kind of work about life and mediation and everything. And it's definitely a hard watch. It's not something I would recommend binging, not in a heartbeat. Like, it is.
For me, the difference is your Silent Voice, that did wreck me, but I am really glad I watched that and stuck with it. So maybe To Your Eternity is the same deal.
It's worth it. It's definitely longer, and it has, because it's an ongoing series, it's actually still ongoing in the manga, as I understand it too, in fact. But it's got a little bit of lore to it, and and that's kind of expanding in season 2. But it's not bleak. I guess that's what because we get a lot of anime, and they're usually a lot of fun, or they're usually a lot of shonen, or I know a lot of people who love, your Berserks, your Goblin Slayers, they love that dark fantasy genre, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I'm just not a big fan of actually coming away feeling that bleak about things. Last year, for example, I bounced so hard off of Idleton Deities for the same reason. Even though it looks goofy as heck, it ends in such a shocking way on its first episode that I did what Allie did to this show, as I was like, nope, we're done. We don't need this. And To Your Eternity does a lot of that pain stuff, but it's in the context of trying to find a meaning in it rather than just hit you with all of the dark stuff and then try to claw out meaning. Every single step is kind of just like one small little journey through processing grief and emotions, and nothing is really left on the table as the show goes on. And also it has both of its OPs are the same song, and they're by Utada, and I love me some Utada. I'm a Kingdom Hearts kid, so I have to stand something that's been out for a while, because it came out at a bad time. Season 2 in particular, it came out right towards the end of the year, so it's not been a part of the big New Year's conversation, and it never made it into the year-end conversation for anybody else. So I got to hold the torch for it for right now.
All right, and I did double check, and it is Brains Base, the studio, at least right now. Okay, so that's To Your Eternity, and then Allie, you'll be finishing us off. Do you have an anime recommendation for us? What's on your mind?
I'm also going to take a bit of a pivot here and recommend also a second season that just started premiering this month also, but it's not available on Crunchyroll. It's available on High Dive, so do as you may. It's Tsurune, though, and it's by Kyoto Animation. Clearly, I am a huge fan of that studio. Tsurune. It's
yeah.
So it's about a classical archery club, which sounds so excessively nerdy, and it is, and it embraces that so quickly, and I think that's part of why I gravitate towards sports anime in general, and also slice of life, is because it usually is talking about like a single subject with so much passion and enthusiasm, and I just love watching people love things. I think that makes for a lot of fun in storytelling. But the cool thing about this show is that while the first season was beautiful and I loved it, I never thought I was getting a second season. I didn't think it was watched very heavily. It's based on a lot of light novels, so it doesn't have like the full through line of, ongoing manga series. But the glow up of the quality of the show between seasons 1 and 2 is extraordinary. And it captures a certain essence of animation that I love. I believe it's something like flower storytelling. I'd have to look it up though to be completely accurate with that. But the way it reflects light and the way it, tells very simple and patient stories while also having this like very grand atmosphere that kind of highlights the characters' emotions more than the characters are expressing them themselves. I just always find that so touching. Again, I'm a huge A Silent Voice fan, which I think does that perfectly. So it kind of shows you where my gears shift in terms of what I look for in an anime. But I think if you're somebody who doesn't really like sports anime, it's almost a good one to get into, because it definitely is more character driven rather than being about the team, the sport itself. It's more about the character's love for the sport.
Awesome. Yeah, I almost picked up the light novel for this one a while back. I think before the new season came out. And I think it was because I was looking for a regular Magic High School, and I kind of just came across this one, and I love the concept. Like, an archery sports anime just sounds really like, that's just like a premise that like immediately has me interested. So now I got to figure out when is this coming to Crunchyroll or something, or I guess I could see it on High Dive or find it that way. But awesome. So we have quite a few animes to recommend here, and I feel like we got a good mix of genres all together. Do you have something to add, Travis?
I was just gonna say we have some pretty good taste, and anime and sports go so well together. You wouldn't have thought about it, but it really does. Just like chicken and waffles or something. It's a perfect combination.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening again. We are going to be back next week for a manga recap for One Piece. and not sure exactly when we are going to be doing another like anime roundtable, but we're hoping to do these at least like, once every couple of months. Once a month would be awesome if we could swing it. But in the meantime, Allie, is there anything that you wanted to plug before we see you next? I mean, you're going to be on Rookie Pirate Radio a lot, so but yeah, anything you got going on you want people listening to know about?
I mean, there's this little site called inbetweendrafts.com, and I would love it if people continue to support us and follow our work, because the writers there are doing amazing things, and I know that's gross to say on a podcast through the site, but I feel like as editor-in-chief I can. So that's my plug. I have nothing else going on,
All right, well, thanks again, and yeah, we'll see you all in the next one.